Good morning. It is Friday, October 9th, 2020. You can now relax and be informed. Here is your daily bite of news. President Trump's doctor said on Thursday that the president had completed his treatments for his symptoms of coronavirus and that he anticipated the president would be able to resume public engagements on Saturday. President Donald Trump said he hoped to resume in-person rallies this weekend. Mr. Trump's re-election campaign released a statement calling for the second presidential debate to take place as originally scheduled in person. There is therefore no medical reason why the Commission on Presidential Debates should shift the debate to a virtual setting, postpone it, or otherwise alter it in any way, the statement said. This goes contrary to the advice of the CDC that says those who test positive for the virus should isolate themselves from others for a minimum of 10 days after testing positive. Speaker Nancy Pelosi is refusing to move a standalone coronavirus bailout for airlines unless the administration also agrees to a broader stimulus package. Several Democrats, including the key chairman, have been demanding urgent action on airlines with tens of thousands of jobs at stake this month. On Thursday, Pelosi stressed to reporters that those talks were on hold, if not abandoned altogether, until President Donald Trump was willing to come back to the table on a multi-trillion-dollar package that she and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin had been negotiating for months. Trump, just weeks ahead of the November 3rd election, abruptly pulled the plug on stimulus talks between Pelosi and Mnuchin on Tuesday. Trump had said the talks were going nowhere, and he'd rather focus on confirming Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court before election. Confusion continued Thursday afternoon when Mnuchin told Pelosi in a 40-minute phone call that Trump remained interested in securing a deal on an economic stimulus package, despite repeated statements to the contrary from himself and his staff. Pelosi and Mnuchin also discussed how to best support hard-hit sectors like restaurants, theaters, and other small businesses. Pelosi characterized the negotiations on a broader bill as still very much alive, but said she was waiting to hear back from Mnuchin on several issues. And Trump himself on Thursday signaled he could be open to a major deal during an interview he did for Fox Business. "I shut down talks 2 days ago because they weren't working out. Now they're starting to work out," Trump said. "We're talking about airlines, and we're talking about a bigger deal than airlines. We're talking about a deal with $1,200 per person. We're talking about other things." President Donald Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi questioned each other's mental faculties, showcasing increasing partisan tensions as the election moves closer. "The president is, shall we say, in an altered state right now, so I don't know how to answer for his behavior," Pelosi said on an interview Thursday. Trump had pulled his team from negotiations on Tuesday, prompting Pelosi to suggest to colleagues that day that Trump's thinking might have been affected by the steroids he'd been given for COVID-19. Trump tweeted Thursday that "Crazy Nancy is the one who should be under observation." He also retweeted posts discussing a coup. Pelosi and Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin will be announcing a bill today, Friday, that would set up a commission to help evaluate whether a sitting president should be removed from the office under the 25th Amendment. The amendment specifies that if a president informs the Congress that he or she is able to carry out the duties of office in contradiction to the assertion of the vice president and cabinet, then he shall resume power unless the cabinet or a body created by Congress issues a report stating otherwise in 4 days. If such a report is made, then 2/3 majorities of Congress can vote to strip the president of power. Caught surprised by President Donald Trump's promise to deliver drug discount cards to seniors, health officials are scrambling to get the nearly $8 billion plan done by Election Day. The taxpayer-funded plan, which was only announced 2 weeks ago, is being driven by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Service Administrator Seema Verma and White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. The administration is seeking to send letters to 39 million Medicare beneficiaries next week, including seniors of Trump's new effort to lower their drug costs, although many seniors would not receive the actual cards until after the election. The $200 cards, which would resemble credit cards and could be used at pharmacies, would be paid for by tapping Medicare's trust fund. The administration has since portrayed the taxpayer-funded drug discount card plan as a test of whether the cards would encourage Medicare beneficiaries to more regularly take their medication while lowering their costs, using what is known as Section 402 authority. The plan to lower their costs comes as administration officials grapple with Trump's falling support among older Americans, a significant threat to his reelection. Trump is currently lagging behind Joe Biden as much as 27 points in polls among Americans ages 65 and older, which is a major reversal from his 2016 campaign. A Canadian project studying the impact of giving cash directly to homeless people told the CBC on Thursday their findings were beautifully surprising. The New Leaf Project, a program of Foundations for Social Change, a Vancouver-based charity, began in 2018 and awarded a group of Lower Mainland homeless people a cash payment of $7,500 each. They then compared how this group of 50 spent it over a year to a control group of people who didn't receive any payments. According to their recently published findings, the group that got cash spent less days homeless than the others who didn't, moved into stable housing in an average of 3 months, and nearly 70% of them became food secure after a month. The individuals who got the payments tended to spend them on necessities. On average, they spent 52% of the cash on food and rent, 15% on small items like bills and medicine, and 16% on clothes and transportation. Spending on alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs went down an average 39% as well. New Leaf says this is a way to potentially cut down on the cost of government services. Canada spends an average of $55,000 per person on social services for the homeless. Direct cash transfers could save $8,100 per person. In recent years, direct cash payments have gained traction as a potential way to combat growing inequality. Cities like Stockton, California, and Jackson, Mississippi have pilot cash assistance programs of their own with similar results. Ghislaine Maxwell, who is in jail awaiting trial on charges of sex trafficking young girls as young as 14 for her former boyfriend Jeffrey Epstein, has hired a new defense lawyer, attorney Bobby Sternheim. Sternheim is known for representing Osama bin Laden associate Khalid Al-Fawaz. Maxwell was arrested in July and is being held at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center. She's accused of helping Epstein recruit, groom, and sexually abuse minors, as well as participating in abuse herself, and is being held without bail. Federal and state officials in Michigan on Thursday announced that 6 men were arrested and accused of plotting with an anti-government group to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer. The group met repeatedly over the summer for firearms training and combat drills and practice building explosives. Members also gathered several times to discuss the mission, including in the basement of a shop that was accessible only through a trap door under a rug. The men spied on Miss Whitmer's vacation home in August and September, even looking under a highway bridge for places they could place and detonate a bomb to distract authorities, the FBI said. The men indicated that they wanted to take Miss Whitmore hostage before the election in November. The FBI said a leader in the kidnapping plot had reached out to members of an unnamed anti-government group for help, and the state charged an additional 7 men from Michigan with providing material support for the terrorist activities. 7 men were said to be affiliated with an extremist group known as Wolverine Watchmen, and the state's attorney general accused them of collecting addresses of police officers in order to target them, threatening to start a civil war leading to societal collapse, and planning to kidnap other government officials. The 7 men were charged with state crimes, which carry penalties of 2 to 20 years in prison. 6 men were charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping, which can carry a life sentence. A judge appointed lawyers for several of the men and set a preliminary hearing for Tuesday morning. Washington Supreme Court on Thursday unanimously rejected a recall effort against Seattle Mayor Jenny Durkan over her handling of widespread summer protests. The recall effort, led by 6 Seattle residents, blames the mayor for the Seattle Police Department's indiscriminate use of tear gas during weeks of protests. The residents said the use of tear gas during a respiratory pandemic was dangerous, and that once became clear the officers were violating the rights of protesters and others by using tear gas, the mayor was obligated to make the department stop. The state's Supreme Court justices said that even if true, the allegations brought against Durkin would not amount to misfeasance, malfeasance, or violation of the oath of office. Orthodox Jewish groups have filed a lawsuit against New York Governor Andrew Cuomo on Thursday, saying he imposed restrictions limiting attendance at houses of worship amid a spike in coronavirus cases. The groups noted that Cuomo announced the latest public health mandates just 48 hours before the Orthodox Jewish community began observing 3 holidays. The groups alleged that Cuomo had trampled on their constitutional right to the free exercise of religion, an injury that cannot be remedied with later money judgment. The plaintiffs asked the court to block Cuomo's order and declare it unconstitutional. The legal filings come following 2 nights of anti-lockdown protests, which have at times become violent inside the Orthodox Jewish community in Brooklyn's Borough Park. We are not going to be deprived of the right that we have in America, like everybody else in America, the right to observe our religion, City Councilman Kalman Yeager told a crowd of protesters on Tuesday evening. This past Tuesday, legendary guitarist Eddie Van Halen died from cancer at 65 years old. Fans placed flowers and guitar picks on Van Halen's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. "My heart is broken. Eddie was not only a guitar god, but a genuinely beautiful soul," Gene Simmons, lead singer of Kiss, had to say. Van Halen was a pioneering guitar player whose hard-rocking band emerged from the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles in the early 1970s to stand at the top of rock and roll for a decade. Eddie Van Halen was born in Amsterdam in 1955 and studied classical piano after moving to Los Angeles, Pasadena with his family in the 1960s. After switching to guitar, he and his older brother, Alex, who took up the drums, formed a band that would eventually become Van Halen in the mid-1970s. The hard rock band featuring Van Halen's explosive riffs and solos quickly became a staple of clubs such as Gazzarri's and the Whiskey's A Go-Go before releasing his debut album in 1978. The album shot to number 19 on the Billboard charts, becoming one of the most successful debuts of the decade, and the first in a string of top-selling albums that would make Van Halen one of the biggest rock acts of the 1970s and early 1980s. China is participating in a World Health Organization-backed vaccine effort, stepping in to fill a void in global health leadership after the U.S. spurned the program. Beijing on Thursday joined an $18 billion COVAX initiative that aspires to give lower-income countries the same access to vaccines as wealthier nations. President Xi Jinping promised in May that vaccines developed by China would be made a global public good to be shared by all. The decision could also help the country's image following widespread criticism from abroad over how it handled the initial outbreak in the central city of Wuhan. A global survey this week by the Pew Research Center found that negative perceptions of China reached record highs in the U.S. and other major economies. COVAX is led by the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations and the Vaccine Alliance Gavi. It currently has 9 vaccines in development and 9 other vaccines evaluation in its portfolio, with a goal to secure 2 billion doses by 2021. In Hong Kong, thieves hauled away $645 million in art and artifacts from a Hong Kong apartment while the owner was in China. Then they left by taxi. Among the stolen items were 24,000 vintage stamps, 10 bronze coins, and 7 calligraphy scrolls that the owner said had been written by Mao Zedong. The majority of the stolen items remain missing, but the scroll, measuring 3 yards, found its way to a buyer before it was recovered by the police. But the scroll had been damaged and cut in 2. The collector told the South China newspaper that he was devastated by the burglary and by the damage to the scroll. He said it was the most valuable item among his stolen possessions. On Thursday, the police charged a 44-year-old suspect named Wu with burglary. He was arrested in Hong Kong, along with another man identified as Tan. The authorities are still looking for 2 other suspects in the burglary. This past October 7th, Wednesday, was Russian President Vladimir Putin's 68th birthday. To honor the day, Russia test-launched a hypersonic cruise missile and successfully hit a target in the Barents Sea. The Circson hypersonic cruise missile hit its target at a distance of 450 kilometers in just 4.5 minutes. It reached hypersonic speeds of more than 8 times the speed of sound. Putin is currently holed up at his residence outside Moscow, where he has been since early April, avoiding infection from the virus that is again rampant in Russia, while unrest surges in 3 countries of the former Soviet Union, and France and Germany are pushing for new EU economic sanctions against Russia because of the poisoning of Russian Democrat Alexei Navalny. Putin's birthday also marked the 14th anniversary of the as-yet unsolved murder of Russian journalist and fierce Putin critic Anna Politkovskaya, who was gunned down in the stairwell of her Moscow apartment building on October 7, 2006. Well, that will conclude our news for today. If you'd like to read up on the topics we discussed, please see our description below for our sources. Subscribe, you shall receive a daily news update. Thank you so much for listening. Be relaxed, be informed, be connected.